like when you actually go back to the Communist Manifesto and the very early days of like the left, they want a central bank. It's literally in there that we control the money supply. It's no surprise to me at all that it's labeled as a right thing, because the actual communists are like, no, we want to run the money ourselves. And Bitcoin as an independent monetary network for peer-to-peer cash is not part of that Communist Manifesto at all. It never will be, and it never can be, according to the guy that wrote the bloody manifesto. Yes, however, I do think it's true that some of the what's the right way of saying it? This is not the right way. The features of being a leftist, but like some of the topics that they care about are solved by Bitcoin.
Yes.
So putting the central banking conversation aside, which I think, like, how can you miss that? I think there is a podcast called Progressive Bitcoiners or something. And
the Progressive Bitcoiner
around there.
I think it's the guy who wrote The Progressive Case for Bitcoin, which is a good book I often recommend to a lot of my friends.
Really interesting. Yeah. So if you had a left-leaning friend, you could show them that.
Yeah, so like if you care about the issues on the left, you should care about this, right? Like stop.
Cool.
And unfortunately, and this is not to throw shade at the libertarians at all, but they're the ones who have seen it first and seen it most clearly. So again, if you're not of that political leaning, those associations can be damaging just in terms of people's preparedness to have an open mind. Because when you say to me, hey, there's this thing, Bitcoin, and if I instantly go, that's a libertarian thing and I'm not a libertarian, that's it. It's a non-starter. I'm not going past that point. And I don't even want to get into the debate, because for me, it's like it's pan-political. It's beyond politics, right? I think you can be right-leaning and love Bitcoin, and you can be left-leaning and love Bitcoin, right? It's for everyone. And it's just one of the things I try and push back on in our community is that, because I would say, of the people I encounter, I'm sure you find it the same, at least 80-90% sort of be right-leaning, which is fine. But I just wish it wasn't as much about that. Like, have your politics, but we don't have to make Bitcoin about your politics. Not because it's not relevant, and it's perfectly relevant to you. I'm going to really be careful here. I don't want to tell anyone what to think in terms of their political leanings. But if you're here for the revolution, as we said, we need it to be for everyone. And by putting a particular color flag over the top of Bitcoin, we hurt the mission, and no one's better off, right?
In all the hours of research I've done, I have become more libertarian, and studying Austrian economics has helped me hugely to understand value and like what's going on around me, and the idea of self-interest and human action. This actually makes sense.
Yep.
But I listened to a podcast recently with Ben Ark, with Peter McCormack. I mean, it's probably maybe 3 to 4 months old now, but specifically talking about Nostr and how that's been developed. And it's come out of basically a bunch of Lightning devs looking at marketplaces online, and they've you now got a Nostr key, and you've got your NPub and NSEC, and the way that you send information is now very much more in the user's hands. Can't be switched off. Social media is kind of the initial use case, shall we say?
Yep.
And where he was so interesting about it was, as a left-leaning political thinker, he's like, what people are missing is this is the fair and open town square that people have been looking for.
Yeah.
And so this isn't about a private company owning a social media platform. This is like anyone can come here and say whatever they want, and it's the ultimate fair playing ground.
Yeah.
And it's using the digitally native Bitcoin token that is also the most meritocratic form of money that's ever existed.
Yep.
And so how someone on the left side of politics can't, it's probably because, let's say, 10% of Bitcoin related content is left leaning at most. And so maybe that, and this is what it all comes back to. It's basically the quality of information that passes through a market is different to different people at all times.
Yep.
And that's what the straw man's all about, right? It's about higher quality information that helps people make better investment decisions. And it's the same thing when you're researching Bitcoin. It's the same thing when you're trying to pick up what political leaning you might have.
Yep.
Oh, well, yeah. Does any of that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, it does. And again, I've got to be clear here too, because you say one thing and people interpret it in a particular way. And I don't want to. I'm not trying to have a go at any kind of political thought. And I have very much embraced the Austrian school of economics, right? Like I'm a latecomer to it, but I'm all in on it, right? I think it's just a much more sound rigorous kind of framework to think about the economy. But it's just, we are political animals. We will always be political. As soon as you've got two people in a room, there's politics straight away, right? And the more that you expand that out, there's always going to be a feature of our species, of our civilization. That's fine. My only point is to not to tell anyone what to think, just to keep Bitcoin separate from your ideology, particularly if you're trying to orange pill someone. Because if you're coming at it from an angle that ostensibly resonates with a particular ideology, you're just not going to get a receptive audience to it. And I think that's the best way. You find out where people are at. What are the issues? I got a really close friend I went to school with. He works for a union, right? Big lefty. Love him to bits. And he was always against it because of the environmental stuff, and for some of the political stuff. And now he's just setting up his SMSF. He's putting all of his money into Bitcoin.
Awesome.
And the reason is because rather than preach to him some asinine dimension of Austrian economics or my particular worldview, it's just like, hey, if you care about the environment and the build out of renewables, you should really look at Bitcoin because it's actually massively positive on that. And here's a bunch of research. I'm sending Daniel Batten stuff, right? It's brilliant. Love it. He's like, I didn't like, and oh, by the way, you're against crony capitalism? Me too. That sucks. I'm a massive capitalist. I'm massively anti-crony capitalism. Are you against that? Hey, this fixes it as well. And just to my point, I don't know, I'm probably laboring the point too much, but it's because I, like you, Jake, I listen to a lot of podcasts in this space, right? And it's an area of frustration for me that too often a particular worldview or ideology is stitched up with Bitcoin. I just don't think it helps the cause. Leave it to the side.
The point is Bitcoin's a tool. And
yes.
You could use Bitcoin to send money to someone to be a, like a sex slave, or you can send someone money to buy your grandma a present.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a tool. Like what you choose to do with it is, up to you.
It is entirely
it's
impossible.
Not political itself.
You can have an entire welfare. If you want it to be, I'm all for the welfare state. I'm a big believer in welfare. It's like, cool. Bitcoin works in that system too. Depends how you want to raise it and allocate it, but you can. It's not mutually exclusive. By the way, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just using it as an example, right? Or I want to live on an abandoned oil platform in some, sovereign individual libertarian utopia. It's like, cool, you can do that too, because money is like, the internet is for people of all stripes, and so is money, and so is Bitcoin. That's my point.
No, it's a good one. It's funny though. So we'll wrap up very soon, Andrew. But a point that really made a difference for me when I was thinking about a lot of this kind of politics stuff is really around how politics eats, and it eats from a trough that it controls the money supply from.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes so much sense in a world in which someone can't print money, because everyone's basically like, no, we don't want to use a money that someone else can just get for free, and we have to work for it. That doesn't work any longer. Sorry, I'm out. And I'm going to choose this other thing. So not only is inflation used as a stealth tax on a population, but equally the way that the debt is used to then finance, federal and state governments in different countries, like that's going to come under much closer scrutiny. And with that, the way that politics is funded is radically changed forever. Now, it hasn't yet happened.
No.
But I wonder, whether or not people will have such strong political affiliations in the future, because there just won't be as much to talk about. It won't be as political as it is currently. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly when the funding of it changes, which will happen, at least in the world I see in the future, it has to be different to what we see today.
I hope so. I mean, look,
like that whole shouting at each other thing is just absolutely pointless.
It is pointless. What am I trying to say? So the budget's been released this week, so I've been following it a lot. And I was in the car the other day, and a senior economist for a big think tank, he also writes regularly in one of the major mastheads, was on the radio saying deficits don't matter. And maybe there's some subtext there, not over a short period of time and not when the money's used in productive ways would be the the one exception where I could kind of see some sympathy with that.
I
But
think that's very generous.
look, I am being generous, but it's sort
That's
of
very
like,
generous. It's like deficits don't matter to you, mate, because you get paid.
yeah. Well, I just think it's so hard to see action and consequence because they are separated by such vast amounts of time, and there's so many different consequential steps along the way. So it's like, we should have more defense. It's like, yep, probably should. World's a scary place. Well, let's just spend $20 trillion on this submarine. I'm like, okay, cool. Education is good. Yeah, I'm for education. We should spend more money on it. Yep, we totally should. Wouldn't it be good to have state-of-the-art healthcare available to everyone? 100%. So all of these things, defense, health, education, massive. I like roads. I like stable society. I like a well-functioning, non-corrupt police force. Like, these are all good things. But what a hard money does is it just forces upon us hard decisions, because they are hard decisions. In the current system, we can ignore the reality of our choice by thinking that by conjuring up money, and it's done in a very roundabout way, and in a way I guarantee you could question our most senior politics, really question them on it, and they'll just reveal that they actually don't understand where it all comes from. Like, fundamentally get it. I don't think anyone thinks they're being dumb, right? They're traveling along with the established orthodoxy. But by pretending that we can have our cake and eat it too, even this economist here is like, you're actually undermining yourself. You're undermining the fabric of society. Ultimately, you're putting inflation onto yourself, right? You might be better positioned to withstand that, but you're not. No one outside of short-term self-interested groups, no one wins from this malarkey. No one wins from it. And so, again, you can structure society how you like and allocate resources how you like, but with a hard money, it just forces the reality of those choices. And one thing you learn as an investor very quickly, you should at least, is that one of the biggest conundrums is a thing called opportunity cost. If I spend money here, I don't have it anymore. I can't spend it there. We live in a world where I can actually decide to buy all of these things, and actually, I'll buy that as well. and that the resources don't exist. There's no extra resources because we create more money. So I don't know what my point is here, other than sort of saying,
it's kind of like, Andrew, if I may, it's like the decision to, do you just sit in your Bitcoin, or do you buy a small equity position in a company that might outpace it?
Yeah.
And the governments now have a hurdle rate.
The pokies, or do I go splurge it on jewelry or something? I don't
imagine that we're going to do 20 trill on pokies,
right? Like, there is an opportunity cost. So the point that I'm always banging on about, and this is the debates that were happening right now in the press: should have the government spent more money here or there? And it's like, well, you can have that debate. We should have that debate, but it's just, you can't have that debate without saying, well, where does that extra, if we decide we need to put more money here, where are we taking it from? Or where are we raising it from, right? Like,
what's the trade-off?
What is the trade-off? And we live in a world where the established orthodoxy and the most high-ranking people in finance and government believe that, I don't think it's as craven as people like to imagine. I really think it's naivety largely, and a misunderstanding of the fundamental way in which all of these things kind of work. But they believe that we can do all of this kind of stuff. And when asked about the long-term consequences, it's always a shoulder shrug. Don't worry, it's the Christine Lagarde. It'll work out. But why? It'll work out. And like, when things are good, we'll take some of this money out of the system again, and we'll build up a surplus for next time. Like, you point to a period of time where that's ever happened on a sustainable basis, right? So
it hasn't. My frustration with modern government is just the lack of accountability. It's like all these decisions that get made, and then it's like, okay, it didn't go as we planned. Okay, well, are you going to lose your job or lose your pension or what? And just nothing, right?
No consequences.
My ultimate gripe. Well,
Andrew, just on that, Jake, just quickly. Please, sorry, on that. It's not just that, but often the gap between decision and consequence can be years. I'm the Treasurer of Australia. I think this would be a really good policy X, and I'm going to do it. And then what you tend to see, usually if you're a politician, you're announcing something because it's going to win your vote. So there's a bunch of people going to be happy with that decision. By the time that decision has resulted in a negative adverse outcome on a net basis, it will probably both. One, it'll be quite a distance between those two things. And two, it'll be very non-obvious. So it's a very easy thing to kind of do at the moment, is to just make big promises, sound good. If it doesn't turn out, it'll be well into the future before anyone figures it out. And they probably won't connect the dots between that and my decision in the first place anyway. So it's a very easy thing to do. And that's why Bitcoin is so important, just because it forces that discipline on it without being able to conjure money out of thin air. We can have a whole discussion on whether fractional reserve still exists under a Bitcoin standard. I suspect it will, frankly, to some extent. But it severely limits that. And as a consequence of that, again, we can still decide to give everyone a universal income if we want, or we can be hardcore, full-on extreme capitalists, whatever end of the spectrum, I don't care. But the trade-offs are made apparent and unavoidable. And that's why it's such a good thing.